Kilmar Abrego Garcia on the way back to the United States to face criminal charges. Nice. This is actually really, really, really good news.
Progressive Victory has officially endorsed Mamdani for New York City mayor. With the race so close, a single phone call really means life or death here. Progressive Victory is officially endorsing Ras Baraka for governor. He's the mayor from Newark who was arrested by ICE about 3 or 4-ish weeks ago. If there was ever a governor who was really going to stand up to the Trump administration, it's going to be Baraka.
We are in a bit of a down spot right now, but this is the planted seed of potentially a new movement. The Democratic Party is useless. You want these new people, these non-DNC insiders to work together because this is the spark that can be cultivated into meaningful opposition.
We are doing phone banks every single day, and we're also going to be canvassing this upcoming Sunday in New Jersey for Baraka. I want to see you joining this PV Discord server, or else, again, you're gonna go to hell. We are creating membership cards for all of our dues-paying members. Get that Progressive Victory membership cards. They look awesome. I've seen the prototypes. I'm hoping to see a lot of you in the Discord server.
The opportunity is right here in front of you, okay? I don't want to hear any whining. You can make a difference. I mean that sincerely. This is an admission of defeat on the part of the administration. You know what he's being subjected to now? Due process. For two, a trial brings a lot more attention to his case. For what? Charges of illegally transporting migrants within the U.S. Presumably the charges are bullshit. Even if they're not, it doesn't really matter to me. What matters is due process. They're backing off. This is a hell of a lot better than indefinite detention in a torture prison in El Salvador. The 2-count indictment, which was filed under seal in federal court in Tennessee last month, alleges Abrego Garcia, 29, participated in a years-long conspiracy to haul undocumented migrants from Texas to the interior of the country. The alleged conspiracy spanned nearly a decade and involved the domestic transport of thousands of non- Wait. Where is this coming from? What, he was a transportation boss? You're not just... Well, yeah, he would have been what, like 18? He's just, oh, he's the guy, I guess. He's the guy. It's interesting that they didn't reveal this information before, like when they were deporting him. Like the whole time, like when they were justifying sending him to El Salvador, they were like, well, he has MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles. Only now have they come up with a decade-long conspiracy to transport undocumented immigrants. Fascinating. It's not impossible that this is true. It's just very unlikely, and you shouldn't trust the Trump administration for anything, certainly with regard to this. That being said, this is a massive walk back on their part, dude. To go from no due process out to El Salvador, goodbye, to we're just going to slam him with trumped-up charges, this is much better. And the egregiousness of these charges means that they're not confident in their ability to silence him with accurate charges. If these charges are falsified, which we can only assume they are because the Trump administration has done nothing but lie about this man, that would mean they didn't feel confident like hitting him with lower charges or with none at all. They still feel they need to weaponize the state against him, but this is much more transparent. He's going to be getting interview opportunities like constantly, nonstop. They might deny him interviewer access, but hey, look, you know, look at what happened with Luigi, right? Luigi doesn't get any time with the reporters, and in spite of that, he's held, you know, dear in the hearts of many Americans. This is going to be every defense attorney's wet dream. Oh, God, yeah. He's going to have like 57 pro bono Harvard lawyers who are looking to make their career defending him. Same thing happened to, oh, Jesus, I'm blanking on his name. Come on. He's the Mahmoud Khalil. Mahmoud Khalil. He hasn't had to pay a cent for any of his legal defense. They arrested him for protesting against Israel, and every lawyer within earshot jumped on him and was like, please, God, hire me. Trump knows from personal experience trials only give you more publicity. Yeah, but that's the thing. And that's one of the nice things about the incompetence of the Republicans, okay? It's actually pretty difficult to silence people in this country, right? If you can hold them in ICE detention indefinitely, and that has happened, but it's difficult to do consistently. And if the media finds out about it, people tend to get pretty upsetty spaghetti, you know? If you hold people in regular jails, usually they can be accessed pretty easily by lawyers. How do you keep a person disappeared? Well, traditionally, authoritarian regimes either send them to, like, gulags, basically, which is what they tried with El Salvador, but it didn't work because one of our Democratic senators went down there. So even then, El Salvador backed down and allowed him a meeting, and it did lead to more press coverage. So even sending people to other countries doesn't seem to be that effective, especially because, again, when you send people to other countries, you have to do so by plane. Like, it's easy to track these flights. They've been trying to send people to Sudan and Libya and, what have you. It's a mockery of the system, to be sure, and it's very, very dangerous, but it's also very loud. Like, to be clear, right? Germany sent millions of people to the camps. The Soviet Union sent millions of people to Siberia. The Trump administration is tripping over itself trying to get single-digit numbers of people over to Libya. It's just difficult to get away with stuff like that in a modern, relatively, in a historical context, democratic state, when everyone's got a goddamn camera phone. It's just tough. It's really difficult to get away with doing stuff like that. Everyone's got a damn smartphone. And not to mention, like, the other option that's on the table for authoritarian regimes, killing people, they can't really do because they haven't crossed that line yet. They just haven't. That's the Rubicon right there. There is eventually a point in every fascist regime where a dissident journalist or an opposing politician dies. And everyone knows who did it, and everyone's too scared to say it, right? That's like the line. And so far, they haven't crossed it. It's all like police brutality and stochastic terror, not deliberate targeted assassination. They did it in Italy. They did it in Germany. Pinochet did it. Everyone does it, okay? But so far, they haven't. And my guess is they're still not going to be able to. Why? Global capital. Who the is going to want to do business in the United States when everyone knows the government will just straight up assassinate you if you disagree with them? I'm sorry, people are just too comfy these days. I just don't think they're complaining about the refresh, I don't think that the modern social framework is tolerant of that sort of thing. They do business in China. Well, yeah, but China doesn't really do that. China has disappeared dissident activists, but usually, in fact, to my knowledge entirely, it does so to its own. Canadians got disappeared, but they were spies. Okay, spies get treated differently, all right? Spies get treated differently. I guess a comparable example in America would be, imagine if America made it clear that it's willing to disappear and kill political enemies, but only its citizens. The Trump administration does it in the opposite direction. They treat non-citizens like the disprivileged class. Basically, the point that I'm getting at here is that China is usually, like, in order to encourage foreign investment, China cracks down more on its own people than it does foreign investors. America has gone in the opposite direction. We're way harsher on non-citizens than we are citizens, obviously. Like, that's the whole pretext of the attack on Abrego Garcia, right? Like, that's the entire framework they're using. It's the justification. So as a consequence of that, I don't really see how the Trump administration can take things to that final step. It would just make the country too unstable. I'm very optimistic about this. You guys you understand I know I stuttered a bit in the middle there, but you understand what I'm talking about, right? The fact that he's now being subject to due process, the fact this is being run through the court system now, this is a walk back. It's a show of weakness from the Trump administration. As a matter of fact, a 2-count indictment which was filed under seal in federal court in Tennessee last month. Here's an interesting question. Do you think they did this after El Salvador said, dude, we can't hold him anymore? Remember, Bukele, we know this, Bukele initially thought he would only be hosting convicted criminals in El Salvador. When Trump surprised him by sending over people who hadn't even been charged, he was uncomfortable with it because, again, El Salvador is kind of a poor backwater country and Bukele's pretty young. He's going to be around for a while. So is the United States. Trump will not be. Trump is old. So how do you think it's going to make El Salvador look in the eyes of future American governments, maybe democratic governments, if he's holding non-criminal American citizens in torture camps? At least if they were convicted criminals. Doubt it. Why would he care? We know he cares. That's not a conjecture. We know for a fact he cares. He cares because it makes him look way the fuck worse to the future American regimes if he's holding on to people who haven't even been charged. Has Bukele said anything recently? No, he's not going to say that out loud. But we know how he reacted initially. It makes me wonder, after more heat got brought onto Abrego here, I wonder if Bukele was like, listen, this one's too hot. You got to take him back. I wonder if this was prompted by him. I'm not sure. It could have been prompted by Trump or by Bukele. But my guess is that Bukele might. To Vosh's point, this is the type of shit that makes international capital and politicians nervous. Yes, this is the kind of shit that destabilizes, you know? China tends to be a lot more permissive on this front. If you're an American in China, you can, I'm not saying you can get away with breaking the law. I'm just saying, like, it's pretty well known that they treat foreigners well in China, at least on a governmental level, because they want you to invest. Isn't this good for jihad? Everything the Trump administration has done so far is good for jihad. Keep your chin up, brother. Obama didn't care about Guantanamo, really? Well, Guantanamo wasn't being used that actively, and also it is technically like American soil, right? You know, on indefinite lease from Cuba, even though the Cuban government doesn't recognize the lease. So, I mean, I'm not defending the existence of Guantanamo. I'm just saying there is a difference between Gitmo and El Salvador. Wait, how? It's complicated. I hope he comes back soon.
Criminal charges for alleged human trafficking. Abrego Garcia has been at the center of a high-profile court battle over his mistaken deportation to El Salvador. These charges are related to a 2022 traffic stop in Tennessee, where the Department of Homeland Security said Abrego Garcia was pulled over with a vehicle full of passengers who all gave his home address as their own. The Trump administration has admitted his deportation to El Salvador was what they called an administrative error, but had refused to facilitate his return despite a Supreme Court ruling.
Then why not cite this as the initial, like, charge? Why the MS-13 hand tattoos? If they had more information to go off of, like, this is an old case. This is the case that the judge issued the do not deport order for because it was ongoing. Like, what is this? Hold on, was he already charged on this? Is this like double jeopardy? Because you can't be charged twice with the same crime. Didn't he already have ongoing litigation on this? Or did he have litigation ongoing that was on a slightly different thing? I actually don't know.
Let's get right to ABC's Catherine Falders, who has this exclusive reporting. So, Catherine, what do we know so far?
So, Diane, what we know is that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is back on his way from El Salvador.
You can be charged twice if one was state, one was federal. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Well, I think there's a difference there. Because you can if the charges are concurrent, but if one doesn't stick, the feds can't then go, okay, round two afterwards, which is what's happening here. Yeah, he had the federal withholding of deportation, but I think that was because he already was undergoing litigation for this case. I'm going to look at the Wikipedia article. I'm going to remind myself. Just give me a sec.
To the United States. He's flying here and should land late this afternoon in the United States. Now, we're told by sources that he's on his way back because he is facing criminal charges. He's been indicted by a federal grand jury, an indictment that remains under seal on charges related to human trafficking. So once in the United States, he will face federal criminal charges for allegedly transporting undocumented migrants within the United States. And as you mentioned, that stems from what we've reported on previously, that 2022 Tennessee Highway Patrol traffic stop where Abrego Garcia was pulled over for speeding. He was in that car with 8 other people who he was transporting. He was originally let go with a warning by the sheriffs, but those sheriffs were speculating off camera that could be related to potentially transporting undocumented migrants. Now, it's important.
Okay. In March 2019, Abrego Garcia and 3 other men were stopped for loitering in Hyattsville, Maryland, in the parking lot of a Home Depot store where, his lawyers say, they were seeking work as day laborers. A Hyattsville Police Department incident report, which names the other men but not Abrego Garcia, said that an officer, quote, approached them because he saw members of the group stashing something underneath a car. The HPD incident report doesn't mention any suspicion of gang membership, but Ivan Mendez, a detective with the Prince George's County Police Department gang unit, said the HPD officer contacted the gang unit because the officer recognized another one of the men as a member of the MS-13 Sailors Clique. MS-13 began in immigrant communities in Los Angeles, right, Several PGPD detectives with the gang unit interviewed the 4 men and said they had reasonable suspicion based on their training experience that Abrego Garcia and the 2 other men displayed traits associated with MS-13 gang culture, for which police cited tattoos, clothing, and info from a source. None of the men were charged with any crime, and Abrego Garcia denied any connection to MS-13. Thing I'm adding in right here, because it's important to remember, it's not illegal to be in a gang. I know that because of the Trump administration, we often forget, but being in a gang is not actually a crime. How could it be? Well, you just belong to a group? That's it? That's not a crime. So yeah, he was charged with no crime. Mendez was suspended from the PGPD in April 2019 for misconduct in office. Oh, okay. Okay, so this is in 2019. ICE paperwork stated that Abrego Garcia is not claiming fear of returning to the country and that Abrego Garcia is claiming fear of returning to his home country of El Salvador. Okay. Legal proceedings. This doesn't mention the 2022 stop at all. Okay, so wait, was there any prior litigation on this? What? I don't see anything in his priors on this. So they're opening up federal charges based on what? A warning issued in 2022? So they're literally basing this off of like, we need to get something on this guy. Here's like video camera footage of a speeding ticket that he received 3 years ago. We're gonna dredge this up to charge him? Jesus Christ. Okay, so yeah, it's not that he has no record then. Okay, wait, here we go. In 2022, at a traffic stop at Interstate 40 in Tennessee, Abrego and 8 others were stopped by the Tennessee Highway Patrol for speeding and veering out of his lane. Abrego Garcia said they were traveling to work a construction job. The officer reportedly suspected it was a case of human trafficking since there was no luggage in the vehicle. Throw the book at whoever the DOJ sends to prosecute this guy.
We are told by sources that an indictment could be unsealed as soon as today, where we will see these federal charges. But again, it's worth pointing out, too, that it's unlikely that this criminal investigation wouldn't have started if it wasn't for that judge in Maryland in that civil case saying that ordering the government to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back to the United States. We remember that went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court agreed with the district judge here and said that he must come back. But again, it's important to point out this is separate litigation. That's the civil case. He is now facing criminal charges here in the United States.
So,
Couldn't they return him to anywhere in the USA, then pick their judge? Well, the indictment was filed within Tennessee, so presumably whatever the circuit court is for that I don't know which circuit presides over Tennessee. They have a random draw from the judges there.
And what's next here?
So what would likely happen next is once Kilmar Abrego Garcia touches down on U.S. soil, he will likely either make his way to a courthouse potentially to face these charges. Maybe that's a federal prison. Again, all of this is unknown. Details are still coming in here, but that is likely what will happen next. He will be here. He will likely make an initial appearance. Timing on that is unclear, but he will be told of these criminal charges if he hasn't already been told when he got on that plane from El Salvador.
Jesus.
All right, Catherine Falders, thanks for that.
AG Bondi's about to speak live. Give me the link. Give me the link. Indictment dropped. Well, we know what the charges are. They had them sealed a few weeks ago, but we know what they are now. This is pretty big news, guys. This is pretty big. This might end up being the first big, well, with Abrego Garcia, it's been ongoing for a while. The big, like, I don't know, chip in the armor, I guess. I wanted to say a different word, but it's a racial slur in certain contexts, but you know what I'm talking about. This could like really undermine the Trump administration's momentum when it comes to immigration-related stuff. Indictment's still worth looking at. Well, then give me the indictment. If they've unsealed it, give me the text. Overdue library book. Yerp. From in or around 2016 through in or around 2025, Abrego Garcia conspired to bring undocumented aliens to the U.S. from countries such as Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Ecuador, or elsewhere, ultimately passing through Mexico before crossing into Texas. That is a very vague opener. They might have nothing on him. Abrego Garcia and co-conspirators from those countries and elsewhere communicated with each other using cellular telephones and social media applications to facilitate the unlawful transportation of undocumented aliens without authorization to and throughout the United States. He collected financial payments from undocumented aliens for illegal transportation into and throughout the United States. The co-conspirators then knowingly transferred money between one another in an effort to conceal the origin of the payments. All persons known to the grand jury were co-conspirators with Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia. All were citizens of El Salvador. All were not U.S. citizens. Was a citizen of El Salvador. Also a member and associate of MS-13. Okay, so they're committing to the MS-13 line. That's great. Not really relevant to the indictment, but got to throw that one in there. Here's a description of MS-13, saying he trafficked other MS-13 members. Okay. Count 1, conspiracy to transport aliens. I'm not going to lie, this might be arrogant of me, but it really makes me think, like, one of the reasons I don't believe this is because I don't believe the Department of Justice under Pam Bondi is competent enough to investigate this, something going back over the course of like a decade, within just a few months. Like, part of my disbelief here isn't the fact that Abrego Garcia couldn't have done this. He could have, for sure. But rather, the fact that, like, they managed to get all of this information on criminal conspiracy going back years within this length of time. I would be very surprised if they were able to substantiate these charges with evidence. They might be able to find circumstantial evidence. It's possible that Abrego Garcia also did, like, a part of this to an extent. After all, he did cross into the country illegally. It's not unlikely that he knew people associated with trafficking, coyotes, other undocumented immigrants. Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia and CC1, that's co-conspirator 1, ordinarily picked up the undocumented aliens in the Houston area shortly after the aliens had unlawfully crossed the southern border of the U.S. from Mexico. Garcia and CC1 then transported the undocumented aliens from Texas to other parts of the United States to further the aliens' unlawful presence in the United States. During the course of the conspiracy, CC1 was incarcerated for alien smuggling and was deported from the United States. During that period, CC2, at the direction of CC1, began working with Garcia to transport undocumented aliens for profit. After CC1 was released from prison and deported, CC1 illegally re-entered the United States and returned to work with Garcia, CC2, and other co-conspirators to transport undocumented aliens for profit. Like, this is a whole criminal conspiracy they've seemingly unearthed here, and they found that in how little time? There weren't any prior charges against Garcia, so unless the federal government was already working on these indictments before Trump took office, they did a lot of investigative work very quickly that they didn't mention at all when he was deported. In addition to transporting undocumented aliens, Garcia, CC1, and CC2 occasionally and simultaneously transported firearms illegally purchased in Texas for distribution and resale in Maryland. Also narcotics, MS-13 members, pay cash. Okay, this is just more details on how they did this, his co-conspirators, and the extent to which they exchanged money for the behavior they engaged in. Garcia, CC1, and CC2 also routinely took the undocumented aliens' cellular phones as they transported within the United States, and they provided them back to the aliens at the end of the trip. They did this to ensure the aliens could not and would not contact anyone else during the trip. They transported undocumented aliens in an unsafe manner, including using reconfigured vehicles with aftermarket unattached seating rows, and they transported children on the floorboards of vehicles in order to maximize profits. As part of the conspiracy, none of the undocumented aliens transported by Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, CC1 and CC2 carried luggage because they had just crossed the border from Mexico into the United States. Ha! This is them trying to tie it to that 2022 traffic stop. This is, listen, look, it all connects. See, it all links together. The reason they didn't have luggage, even though they just traveled from a different country into this one. Seriously? Wait. The allegation here is that people are less likely to have luggage on their person if they've just been smuggled into the US. Wouldn't that mean they'd be more likely to be carrying some stuff because they just brought their lives with them? Like, they're already transporting their bodies across, you know? But this right here reeks to me as a line included only so that the DOJ prosecutor can point to it and go, and that's why it was like that in that 2022 body cam footage. Yeah, the indictment's working backwards from their conclusion. That's how it feels to me, but that's just a guess. It is possible he did this stuff. It's just, you know, why would I ever trust the DOJ? Oh, look at this. To conceal their illegal activity, Garcia, CC1, and CC2 routinely devised and employed knowingly false cover stories to provide to law enforcement if they were stopped during a transport. These false cover stories regularly involved the transportation of individuals, such as aliens, for work such as construction jobs. Oh, it's all coming together, man. Just like in that 2022 recording. Oh, man. That's why it was like that. Okay, let's just move quickly because I do want to see what she has to say. Oh yeah, look, right here they mentioned the traffic stop. There were 9 additional passengers in the Suburban, all of whom were Hispanic males, none of whom had any identifications. Is that true? Has that been confirmed? That wasn't in the wiki article, but it was said by the ABC Newswoman. Did the ABC Newswoman only read that from the indictment, which had recently been unsealed, or is that general information? Because the Wikipedia article didn't say that. When asked where they were traveling from, Garcia knowingly and falsely told the state trooper he and the passengers were coming from St. Louis. He further knowingly and falsely stated to the state trooper the Suburban passengers had been in St. Louis for 2 weeks doing construction. Garcia also offered that the passengers were on their way back to Maryland, which he also then knew to be false because the passengers had been picked up in Texas. None of them had any luggage, nor were there tools or construction equipment in the Suburban. License plate reader data, which can track a particular vehicle's location at a given point at a given time, showed the Chevrolet Suburban Kilmar Abrego Garcia had been driving it up in near St. Louis for the past 12 months. Prove it in court, I guess. Garcia had $1,400 in cash in his pocket. Okay. And count 2, unlawful transportation of undocumented aliens. Okay. There we go. We have the basic information. Let's take a look at Pam Bondi.
We're here today to announce a major update in an important case. Abrego Garcia has landed in the United States to face justice. On May 21st, a grand jury...
Dude, all part of the grand plan, dude. Yeah, we whipped up some indictments after already deporting him to a torture camp. It's definitely not because this has turned into a shit show. This was all part of the plan, baby. Send him back there, cook up some indictments over here, bring him back.
In the Middle District of Tennessee, returned a sealed indictment charging Abrego Garcia with alien smuggling and conspiracy to commit alien smuggling in violation of Title 8 U.S.C. 1324. We want to thank President Bukele for agreeing to return Abrego Garcia to the United States.
This makes me think that it was prompted by Bukele, by the way.
Government presented El Salvador with an arrest warrant, and they agreed to return him to our country.
Fascinating. So you can just return people to the United States literally whenever you want. That's very interesting. I just, you know, I've got a bad memory, but not so bad that I don't remember how a few months ago the main argument you guys were using was, well, we can't. That's a sovereign foreign country.
We're grateful to President Bukele for agreeing to return him to our country to face these very serious charges. This is what American justice looks like. Upon
this is hugely embarrassing for the administration, so expect her to like play this up as much as possible.
Completion of his sentence, we anticipate he will be returned to his home country of El Salvador. The grand jury found that over the past 9 years, Abrego Garcia has played a significant role in an alien smuggling ring.
And we found this, but somehow we only knew about it like starting yesterday. Like we didn't mention this at all when we were justifying his deportation. They were so desperate for looking at for any excuse to tear into this man. They were like bringing up DV allegations brought against him by his wife that she's since said like, well, we worked past it or whatever. But they didn't mention this. Oh yeah, I'm sure this case has been in the works for a while.
They found this was his full-time job, not a contractor. He was a smuggler of humans and children and women. He made...
Does that imply that only men and non-binary people are human beings?
Over 100 trips, the grand jury found, smuggling people throughout our country. MS-13 members, violent gang, terrorist organization members throughout our country.
Not beating the these are made up charges allegations with how it's being presented, but I guess she can't help it, right? Even if these charges were real, she would still talk about them like this.
Thousands of illegal aliens were smuggled.
Millions.
This is especially disturbing because Abrego Garcia is also alleged with transporting minor children. The defendant traded the innocence of minor children for profit.
The innocence? What does that mean? Is she implying he sex trafficked them and not like brought families over that have kids in them?
There are even more disturbing facts that the grand jury uncovered. It is alleged this defendant is part of the same smuggling ring responsible for the death of more than 50 migrants in 2021 after the tractor trailer overturned in Mexico. This is part of that same ring.
I remember that news story. It's a real tragedy.
The defendant abused undocumented alien females, according to co-conspirators who were under his control while transporting them throughout our country.
According to your co-conspirators, so you have testimony from people who worked with them? You obtained that within the past few weeks?
This defendant trafficked firearms and narcotics throughout our country on multiple occasions. They were using
A grand jury does not find or uncover stuff at all. A grand jury, all they do is find if the evidence presented is sufficient to warrant a trial, not guilt. Yeah, which is ridiculous because the Trump administration absolutely does not need any pretext to warrant a trial. My guess is that they have literally nothing on him, and that when they start talking about the evidence they have, they're going to bring up the body cam footage from 2022 from the traffic stop, and they're going to be like, yeah, here was a cop witnessing the trafficking of minor children and robbing their innocence, or something to that effect. You know, like they're gonna coast off what they have.
Vehicles, SUVs with added seats in the back, floors that had been ripped out, guns, narcotics, children, women, MS-13 members. That is what the grand jury found. A co-conspirator alleged that the defendant solicited nude photographs and videos of a minor. A co-conspirator also alleges the defendant played a role in the murder of a rival gang member's mother. These facts demonstrate Abrego Garcia is a danger to our community.
It's crazy that like none of this came up during the multiple years that his identity was known by ICE and local police departments, and he already had like ongoing judicial oversight with a do not deport to El Salvador order. It's just remarkable that none of this came up. There was no case being brought against him.
We want to thank the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, our state and local partners, our acting U.S. Attorney Robert McGuire, and prosecutors from the Joint Task Force Vulcan.
Damn, like if only the timeline had worked out differently. If they had just presented all of this information and then deported him to El Salvador, nobody would have raised a stink about it. Genuinely, like it's just like you really put the cart before the horse with this one.
Questions.
Attorney General, the traffic stop that we've seen video of from Tennessee, where Abrego Garcia was first identified by the
Task Force Vulcan is a DHS task force tasked with destroying MS-13. By the way,
local authorities. At the time, the Homeland Security Department declined to take custody of him. What has happened in between that time and in between the time that the government has been arguing that he was not returnable from El Salvador? What has happened since in this investigation that brought you here?
Yes, the question was in 2021, there was the traffic stop.
2022, Pam Bondi, that was in 2022. You are giving a press conference on this. You are the nation's chief prosecutor. It's 2022.
And what has changed since then? What has changed is Donald Trump is now president of the United States and our borders are again secure.
Okay, all right. So you have nothing. Hey, what changed? Why did this decade-long criminal conspiracy only get brought up now after all the bad publicity from you illegally deporting him and the Supreme Court demanding his return? Well, we're more patriotic than ever before. Okay, gotcha. So they have nothing. Oh, I hope to God it's an open trial. Please, God, give me footage inside the trial.
And thanks to the bright light that has been shined on Abrego Garcia, this investigation continued with actually amazing police work.
Pam Bondi sucks at her job, Lamal. Yeah, no, she does, genuinely. Again, thank God Stephen Miller is not like the bar for competence in the administration. Pam Bondi is really dumb. And
we were able to track this case and stop this international smuggling ring.
What? You broke up a international smuggling ring? So wait. Is the implication then that there was a larger trafficking ring they broke up only after Garcia had been deported, and in breaking up that ring they found he was tied to it?
From continuing.
But these were recently found facts, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it is really strange we didn't know about that prior. Crazy all that info came out right at the last second. By the way, I am obsessed with how stupid she sounds. I love how every time she answers a question, it looks like she's following the world's slowest teleprompter, and she has no idea what the next word is going to be.
And stop this international smuggling ring from continuing.
I do love it. I really do. Thank God. Thank God. Thank God it's her and not Gates, because Gates is a idiot, but a little bit better than this. Just a little bit more going on up here.
But these were recently found facts, right?
Yes,
Okay.
recently found facts.
Uh-huh.
To that point, can you just explain when this investigation was opened? The investigation in Tennessee, can you say when that investigation was opened?
Well, the grand jury indicted on May 21st. This investigation has been ongoing.
So literally less than a month ago, ongoing over the past 2 weeks.
This case has been hotly debated here in Washington. In your mind, does this resolve that issue in terms of his deportation? And should this be seen in any way as complying with the judge's order to return him to the U.S. and the Supreme Court ruling that the U.S. government should facilitate his return?
There's a
hello, person? I will say this is a kind of smart way of like placating the Supreme Court because you're bringing back Abrego Garcia and complying with their order. You're just doing it like, you know, in a very Trumpian way, I guess. Also, anyone else get the vibe that none of the reporters are buying this? Like all the people there are like, okay, dude, wow, you found evidence of criminality for the guy you already decided you were gonna illegally deport? Okay, yeah, sure, lay it on us.
big difference between what the state of play was before the indictment and after the indictment. And so the reason why he is back and was returned was because there's an arrest warrant, which was presented to the government.
Out of curiosity, just asking, why would you be constructing an indictment against an illegal immigrant who you said you have indefinitely deported to El Salvador, his home country? Like, why would the United States federal government spend time investigating and creating an indictment against a person who, according to the administration, never should have been here and will never be coming back? Just out of curiosity. That's not typically something the federal government does, just randomly drafting indictments against criminals in other countries.
In El Salvador. So there's a big difference there. As far as whether it makes the ongoing litigation in Maryland moot, I would think so, but we don't know that. This, he just landed today.
Okay.
Jake, CBS.
Dude, look at her. She's like a bird. You know who she reminds me of? The lady from It's Always Sunny. Does she not give that vibe? Both in being like a lost bird. But also in, I don't know, there are some commonalities.
Just landed today.
What?
Jake, CBS.
I just want to confirm what you said earlier, that you're intending to prosecute him and keep him in an American prison if he's found guilty, and then would remove him after his sentence is over.
Correct. Yes, he will be prosecuted in our country.
Why? If he's an undocumented immigrant after he's been convicted, you have every legal right to deport him. But yeah, that's what lets you deport them. Well, depending on the circumstances, I guess. No, that's actually normal. It's fairly normal for countries to extradite criminals to other countries based on an arrest warrant. Like, those circumstances depend, right? But if you've already deported someone and said you're never coming back to the US, to then say, never mind, yes you are, yoink, and pull you back to the US just to draft an indictment and charge and so on, that's contradictory.
Sentenced in our country if convicted, and then returned after completion of his sentence.
Last one, Sadie, Wall Street Journal.
Okay. I have two. One's on topic, one's off topic.
Okay.
Maybe I misunderstood you, but you were mentioning, that he had some involvement in a murder, or was connected to groups that had, involved with this.
Yeah, he's like was like El Chapo's right-hand man, single-handedly murdered 14 guys in a bar argument. Yeah, he's a pretty nasty dude. Yeah. Probably found one of the lost nuclear weapons that the US dropped into the ocean back in like the 60s, and he's been using it to like hold Maryland hostage. Yeah, it's a big deal.
Smuggling ring, but to be clear, the only charges he's facing right now are the human smuggling charges. Just that's the one offense. But the other things that you have talked about are not actually in the indictment?
No, co-conspirators allege that, and we were clear to say that. He is charged with, it's not only very serious charges of alien smuggling. And again, there were children involved in that.
We are charging him with smuggling aliens illegally. Also, allegedly, he is a rapist, murderer, pedophile, piece of shit, El Chapo's son, worst human being alive. But the charge is on the smuggling.
You know, human trafficking, not only in our country, but in our world, is very, very real. It's very dangerous. And as you saw recently in Virginia, the arrest...
Also, there is, by the way, a bit of a semantic inflation here, because while human trafficking can technically describe both, there's an enormous difference between human trafficking, i.e. you kidnap and force people to go to different places against their will, which is very, very bad, or human trafficking when undocumented immigrants come into America and want to make a life here, so you offer to help, like, bring them somewhere. These are treated differently, obviously. They're different things. They're very clearly different. The similarity in this case being only that you are moving people, but you are not kidnapping people if you're just moving them to a place they want to work. Now, there is often an overlap between these two, as in there are groups that will facilitate your entry illegally into the United States, but then once you're in the United States, they will kidnap and traffic you, you know? And that is a serious issue. So I look forward to them proving that in their case against Garcia.
We made of the MS-13 member unrelated to this. We learned at that press conference, that's where they bring young children into our country and they start grooming them at middle school age to become MS-13 full...
What the f are we talking about?
Fledged members commit violent crimes throughout our country. It is highly organized. It is very dangerous. And they are living throughout our country, but no more, because they are being arrested, they are being prosecuted, and being convicted and deported when appropriate.
Thank God. Stephen Miller is the exception and not the rule, dude. Such a blessing. Such a blessing, genuinely.
That's all for today.
Yeah, I
bet.
Thank you. I bet. Holy shit, those pumps. I didn't realize. Look at her heels, dude. She is such a Barbie, and I'm standing. That's queen shit, okay? Those are like, what, 4-inch heels? Damn, bitch, you draft just the indictments like that? Not like 5 or 6. My 4s aren't that high. Yeah, I don't really have a good eye for it. I've never really worn heels. Abrego Garcia is coming back. The Trump administration is sheepishly complying with the Supreme Court order to return him home. They're doing so with the excuse that they're bringing charges against him. The charge? He was the leader of a big smuggling organization that somehow nobody had any evidence on up until after they illegally deported him to El Salvador. They found out all that stuff afterwards, really quickly somehow. The indictment was only like created like 2 weeks ago, and they unsealed it almost immediately after. He's back in America now. I think this is fantastic. I'm glad he's back here in America. I'm glad that due process is being done, even if the charges are probably bullshit. And I think that the lack of enthusiasm of this delivery, really funny. Like, you can tell Pam doesn't want to be here, you know? She was showboating half her time speaking. She was just, you know, well, Trump is single-handedly defeating MS-13, whatever. Barely any questions answered. Very obviously the administration walking back on its Hitler shit. I mean, you know, not entirely, but being forced to an extent. She also I feel like she looks like she was being held hostage. When she was standing off to the side for that minute there and the fellow was speaking and she like nervously glanced around, doesn't it kind of feel like she's being handled a bit here, a little?
Is back and was returned was because there's an arrest warrant, which was presented to the government in El Salvador. So there's a big difference there. As far as whether
what is she saying here?
Today.
What is she saying here? Look at this.
Jake, CBS.
I just want to confirm what you said earlier.
She's the attorney general. Is there really somebody on like off to the side of the stage directing her? Can she not handle herself in a press conference that she's calling? She's the top prosecutor. She's the attorney general. Who's she like nervously glancing to? My guess, she has no idea what she's doing. She wants to go back to, I don't know, making paper airplanes or whatever the f she does, practicing her model walk, you know? She did the legally required minimum and that's that. She wants to go home. Her feet hurt. Her feet probably do hurt. Anyway, wow. Bit of good news, huh?